going to be asking probably a lot of self-indulgent questions that I've been wanting to ask since I was a kid.
Okay.
But I want to kind of know, ThunderCats, when that was initially like pitched to you, what was your first introduction to ThunderCats? How was that idea thrown to you initially?
Well, my agent called me one day and said, there's going to be a new animated television series that's going to be recorded in New York, which was a big surprise to all of us because this was in 1983 we first got the call, late 83. Because all the animation had been done in California before that. Disney Studios and Warner Brothers and places like that. And the animation was still going to be done there and in Japan. But even the voices, the recording of the voices for all cartoon shows had been done in California forever. So we were kind of surprised, but very happy, that some New York actors were going to be able to be on the show. So I got a call one day, and my agent said Monday or whatever it was at 2 o'clock, you have an appointment at such and such a studio. And all I knew at the time was that it was going to be called ThunderCats. And then when I got to the studio at my appointed time, with all the other actors who were scheduled to be there at that particular hour, we were handed a printout of basically what the show was about, a couple of pages of what the show was about, what each character was like, and what his role was. Lionel was to be the Lord of the ThunderCats and all that. And they had, all the walls were covered with illustrations of the characters.
Okay, so you saw concept stuff.
Saw concept, exactly, yeah. And then, of course, you're asked if we had any questions before we went in. And then you give them the script. As I recall, this is 30 years ago, as I recall, they said pick 3 characters that you'd like to read for. So I picked Lion-O, and I think I picked Mum-Ra, I'm pretty sure I picked Mum-Ra, and I picked Jackal-Man. And I ended up being Lion-O and Jackal-Man on the series.
Was there any logic behind you picking those 3?
Well, Lion-O, because he was going to be the Lord of the ThunderCats, I wanted to be the big guy,
Yeah.
And Jackal-Man, I think the reason I picked him was from reading the description of, the term jackal, you think of a jackal as a kind of a sly, sneaky, animal. Like a kind of like a wolf, or a hyena, something like that. At least that's what I've always thought. And my mind went immediately to when I was a kid. One of my favorite cartoon shows was Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Okay.
Anybody remember Rocky and Bullwinkle? There was a character named Snidely Whiplash. There was a classic villain with the top hat and the cape, and he's always trying to cheat people. This young woman Nell out of her father's inheritance and all that,
And he always talked like that, I'm going to tie you to the railroad track. Yes?
So that I got that picture in my mind, that voice in my mind, that would be a good one for this character. So that's what I did. You recall Jackal-Man and ThunderCats kind of sounded like,
we must get the ThunderCats, yes? Let me get the Mum-Ra.
So that's kind of why I picked Mum-Ra, picked Jackal-Man, and unfortunately I got the role.
Is it a different kind of preparation? Because I have some friends who are quote-unquote working actors who regularly go to auditions, and when they're given a script, they can kind of get an idea in terms of the way a character's going to dress, the way they're going to present themselves when they're in the audition. What's your mindset when you're going into audition for a voice role, when all you're seeing are concept sketches of a character? How do you know what you're going to portray voice-wise?
Well, I always try to think of what can I bring that might be different than they're going to hear from the other 300 people they're hearing these next 3 or 4 days. Because they audition on both coasts, in LA and in New York for the fun. And what was going to boil down to 5 people who were going to do all the voices in the show. And I think they auditioned 500 or 600 people. So in a situation like that, I always think to myself, there are going to be a lot of good people auditioning for this. Again, they're all going to be top professionals. And a lot of them are going to sound alike, So what can I bring that might be a little bit different? that's why I did the Jackalman thing. I wanted to do Jackalman because I thought maybe nobody else would think of that type of voice for him. You know, there may have been somebody who did, but. So that's what I think about a lot. And to answer your question, how do you prepare for and come up with a voice just based on what it's on a written page or a picture? For me, a lot of it, I don't know. I look at a picture of the character or a drawing, an illustration, and just kind of stare at it. And before I try to think, what would he sound like? I almost let him talk to me.
In what way?
I just stare at it until a voice comes into my head.
Okay.
Like, okay, go ahead and talk to me. Tell me, let me hear what you sound like. I know it sounds crazy.
Well, it's not really that crazy.
So what? So I'm crazy, okay?
It's actually not that crazy, because my wife and I have conversations all the time about how we think each of our cats has a different voice.
Yeah.
Like, our head, when our cats are knocking things
Well,
out
that's
of town.
exactly what we were doing. Which of these cats has this sound of voice?
Okay.
The ThunderCats, yeah.
So why was it a big deal? I mean, 'cause I'm not really familiar with the voice acting scene in that era. Why was it a big deal for this to be in New York and not California?
I don't know. We never asked that, I don't think. At least I didn't. We were just so happy that it was going to be done in New York.
Well, why were the majority of them done in California?
It's just that's where all the animation had been done before. And that's all I can tell you. I don't know.
Okay.
Now, of course, we have Nickelodeon in New York. We have Comedy Central and the Cartoon Network. There's more of an industry there built around animation.
Okay.
That may have been the reason, but I don't really know. We were all very surprised. I remember even those of us who at the audition when you were waiting to go in, we'd be talking with other actors and they'd say, "Why are they doing it in New York?" I wonder. I don't know, but don't ask. Don't ask why they're doing it. It might make them mad.
It's a good secret when anyone to know.
Yeah.
When you started recording ThunderCats, did you kind of have an inkling that it was going to be something special?
Well, not immediately. I mean, we could tell that. We could tell right away that the artistry, the illustrations that they showed us were really good and compelling. They were neat to look at. They weren't just some nondescript. What's that supposed to be? And the idea itself of a group of half animal, half human beings was going to, the show was going to be about them trying to get from one planet to another. It sounded compelling. But you never know in this business. I mean, whether you're doing an animated series or you're doing a comedy on TV or you're doing a movie, you can be working with the most talented people and have the best writing and all that. And the thing that if the public doesn't like it, it's not going to be a big hit. So you never really know. I do like to tell the story of people used to ask me, when did you know? When was the first that you knew that ThunderCats was a big hit? And it was about 8 months or so into the show. First of all, I'm getting ahead of myself. First of all, you get the job. We start recording the show, and we've done a few shows, and it's coming together, and we can tell it's going to be pretty good. And then finally, we got to see the animation with your voices on it, because you do the voices first. I don't know if you all know that, but anytime you do animation, you record the voices first, and then the animators do their work to your, what you've given them. I would assume it's because it'd be very, very hard for actors to match it. If the thing were already animated. In fact, I've done some jobs where they want you to match something that somebody else had done or whatever. It's already been animated. It's pretty hard to do it so that you match the lips or the bill or whatever, of the character. It's hard to act it and watch the screen and make sure you get adjusted at the right time. So that's one reason you do it first. But getting back to when I found I really knew it was a big hit. We did several shows, and then they sold it to ABC. I think it was on ABC first. They sold 13 shows, so we knew we had a show for 13 weeks. Then after about 10 weeks, the show had been on the air about 10 weeks. Then they bought a year's worth. So now we know we've got a show that's going to be on the air for a year. But you still don't know you've got a big hit. You don't know, that it's going to turn out to be ThunderCats, what we know today. And then the numbers, the ratings keep getting bigger and bigger, and finally you say, we've got a hit show. But when I really knew that this show was going to be huge, I was at a Toys R Us store about maybe a month before Christmas. And this probably would have been in 85, Christmas of 85 maybe, because the show went on early 85. And I walked into Toys R Us to shop for, my kids for Christmas. And the last time previous to this I had been at Toys R Us, ThunderCats had been on the air only for a couple of months. And they had a few toys there. One little section in the corner, they had some ThunderCats toys. Everything else was He-Man and Masters of the Universe, and Ninja Turtles, whatever else was on at that time. He-Man, I think I mentioned. This time when I walked in, I started to go back to the corner where the thing, and right at the entrance to the store was not one aisle, but 3 aisles, all the way back through the store, nothing but ThunderCats stuff. And I thought, oh my God, thank you. Oh my God, this show's a hit. And you guys may have read this or heard me say this in an interview before, but there were 2 young boys, probably 10 and 8, maybe 12 and 10, looking at the figures. And as I walked past, and I'm looking at it, and there's Cat's Lair, and there's the Thunder Tank, and there's the lion. And I heard this one kid said, I'm gonna get Tiger, because I think he's the neatest Thundercat. The other one said, well, yeah, I think I'll get Panther. So I couldn't resist it. I said, why don't you get Lion-O? He's the one who says, ThunderCats, ho! And they both looked at me like I was this pervert. And I figured, okay. I just walked away, and as I got just almost out of hearing range, I heard one of them say to the other one, he didn't even sound like him. And I thought, you little fart. If you only knew, it was Lion-O's voice. But that's when I knew it was a long answer, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm thinking of the kids still telling stories about this creepy guy doing a Lion-O voice at Toys R Us.
To this day, I hope that somebody's going to walk up to me at a Comic-Con, some 40-year-old guy, and say, I was at Toys R Us in Norwalk, Connecticut.
Oh, was it Norwalk Toys R Us?
Yeah.
No other down the street?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we live in New Canaan.
Okay.
So, and that I would meet one of these 2 guys, that were there that day. Now, this young fella, the Boy Scouts held up a sign a second ago. We got 15 minutes. So.
15 minutes. We go till 6:30.
Oh, the thing out there says 5:30 to 6.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do I know? I trust Boy Scouts.
Me too.
It's the last one of the day. Go as long as you want.
Yeah, we'll go as long as we want.
All right.
When you're recording the show, I know there's a lot of stories about when they did movies like Shrek and a lot of the animated movies for today, that a lot of the actors are not in the same room together. They're not actually interacting. When you guys were recording ThunderCats, you obviously had a smaller cast, but were you guys in the room together?
Yeah, we were always together. There were five of us, and then for the second season, I think there were 6 of us. Me, Bob McFadden, no, my numbers are probably going to be wrong. Me, Bob McFadden, Peter Newman, Lynn Lipton, Earl Hammond, and Earl Hyman. 6 of us the first year. And then Jerry Ann Raphael joined us the second year. She didn't end up doing Pooh-Myra and Chilla. But we were always in a large studio, and there were 6 microphones set up in a semicircle. And we always worked together. And now there were times when, at the end of the day, the director might have said, might have realized that she needed one of us to just do a couple of lines over or something. At that point, you might just come in by yourself. We also had what we used to call ooh and ah sessions, where we recorded, once we got started, we recorded 4 shows a month. We'd work on a Thursday, every month we'd work on a Thursday and a Friday consecutive. 2 shows each day, one in the morning, lunch, another show, episode, and then the next day, Friday, same situation. Once a month. And the reason for that was, originally you make 13 shows to try to sell to a television network. You don't make more than that because if you don't sell the show, you know, you've wasted a lot of money paying writers, animators, actors, studios. So you make 13 episodes. And and probably the main reason that you don't do more than that is, and then once you've done that, one of the main reasons once you've done that and you're on the air now, you might think, well, you'll just do a show every day for 3 months and you've got all 130 of them. But you've got to give time for the writers to write new episodes and the animators to animate the episodes, to animate new episodes that, you know, that you've already recorded. So that was the pace. It took about a year and a half, I think, to do all 130 episodes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you actually go back? Did you actually watch the episodes as they aired, or did you just do your job and then you just saw your toys in Toys R Us?
Well, I remember watching them. You know, I didn't watch every day.
Yeah.
You know, for one thing, I was probably still in the city. You know, because originally it came on after school, I think, as I recall. And I was usually still in the city working. I wouldn't get home until 6 or 7 o'clock at night.
Days before DVRs.
And that's right. That's right. There weren't even any VHSs back then, as I recall. I don't remember what year that was, but yeah, there were VHS machines. Yeah, but I would see one once in a while. Yeah, but. Do
you have any favorite episodes or any favorite episodes you've done?
I asked that a lot. I would have to say of all of them, my favorites are probably the 2 episodes where I played Lionel as a little boy. As about an 8 or 9-year-old boy. For those of you who know the show, and I assume most of you do, Lionel basically all the way through the show you could describe him as a boy in a man's body. Because even though he was, I don't know, 25 years old, he had been asleep half of that time in this hyperbolic chamber where they had to get him to the third Earth. But in these first couple of episodes, I think it was called Exodus, where they're leaving Thundera. He actually was still young. So I had to be Lionel, but instead of, you know, sort of omens come to my hand, had me more like, Snarf, I'm not sure I know what I'm doing here, you know. I mean, I'm Lord of the ThunderCats, but what does that mean? So that was kind of fun to play it.
You like the challenge?
I like the challenge,
There you
yes,
go.
sounding young.
Let's open up the floor. Anyone here got any questions that they want to ask? Go right ahead.
I heard that the show was older, but I heard that you actually made a new version of your series.
We did ThunderCats, yes. We did. Warner Brothers bought the rights to ThunderCats from Rankin Bass, which was the company that originally made it. At some point, several years ago, Warner Brothers acquired the rights from the Rankin Bass Corporation. And originally, about 6 or 7 years ago, Warner Brothers announced that they were going to make a full-length CGI ThunderCats movie. CGI meaning computer generated. It was not going to be live action. It wasn't going to star Brad Pitt. You know, it was going to be a cartoon. So they were going to make a CGI movie, and they had hired a screenwriter, and a director. And there were stories on the internet about the ThunderCats movie will be coming out in a couple of years. The next thing you know, about 6 months later, they announced that they were putting the movie on the back burner, but they were going to begin working on a new ThunderCats television series, and that's it. Came out in 2011, I believe. And I played Lionel's father on that one. Claudus was his name.
Do you ever see the trailer that's on YouTube with Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you like the idea of them trying to bring back something that, I mean, for someone like me, I mean, ThunderCats was a part of my childhood, so I don't always like seeing those kind of things brought back and redone in CGI animation or just kind of redone at all. I mean, does it kind of, I mean, you played the father in a new series. I mean, do you care, or you just?
Well, I care. My only concern was that when I got the call from my agent and saying, hey, they're going to make a new ThunderCats and they want you to be in it, I said, well, they asked me, do you want to be part of it? And my only thought was that I wanted to talk to some of the people involved to see what kind of the treatment they were going to give it. I've always been very concerned about tarnishing the legacy of ThunderCats. Not for me, because I don't own the rights or anything like that, but for the fans of the original show, because the fans over the years, especially in the last 20 years or so, with computers and Facebook, and all that kind of stuff, I began getting emails from ThunderCats fans, and thousands and thousands over the years, and people would tell me how much the show meant to them for various reasons. A lot of people have said to me, I didn't have a very good childhood, and they would go into various degrees of detail about that. I knew what they meant. Some of them maybe were abused, and some of them they were very poor, their families were poor or whatever. And so many of them would say, but when I was in my room watching ThunderCats for that half hour, that all went away and I could forget about my problems. So I think ThunderCats means a lot more to its fan base than a lot of other shows, simply because of the kind of show it was. It was a cartoon show with heart. It was good. If you remember back then, a lot of the cartoon shows that were already on were pretty violent. A lot of, transforming and fighting, and I don't want to mention names, but transforming, get it? And trying to prove you're a He-Man, that sort of thing. And ThunderCats came along with the Code of Thundera. If you recall, the ThunderCats, they would fight Mum-Ra and the evil mutants and all that. But first they would try to talk about it. Let's sit down and talk about this, what you're doing is not right. You should do this. And then if they refuse, then okay. But seriously, the show had a moral compass, I think, more than a lot of the other shows had. And I, to this day, get people of all walks of life from all over the world who say, I learned how to be a good person by watching ThunderCats. I know that's pretty broad, but believe me, I hear that from a lot of people. So that's why I've always been very protective of what people do with ThunderCats. I can control whether I'll be a part of it or not. So it goes back to your question when they make the new one, did I want to be a part of it? I talked to several people. I talked to a couple of guys who were the artists who were going to draw it all, and the writers. And I talked to the director of the show at Warner Brothers. And just from what they told me, I could tell they were going to keep very close to the spirit of the original ThunderCats. I knew it was going to be a different series. Why make the same thing over again? Some people say, well, why didn't they use all the same actors? Why didn't they use the same music? Why didn't they? Well, what's the point of making the same show over again? So, from what I could glean from talking with them and reading different things, reading some of the scripts, I could see they're going to do a good job with it.
So you had faith in them?
Had faith in them, yeah.
Right, so
and I think they did put out a good show. I thought the series was good. And I didn't love everything about it, but I think they did a good job. I was sad when it got canceled.
Well, I think we got time for one more question. If anyone else has anything they want to ask? No? All right. One more, go ahead.
I would. You said that you did two voices. How do you balance between two of the characters you did from the original ThunderCats?
Oh, you mean if I were doing two characters talking to each other and they were both my characters?
Yeah.
Oh, well, good question. Some of the actors like to, because each of us in the cast was one of the ThunderCats. I was Lion-O. And then you also were one of the major mutants. Like I was Jackalman. And then later on I did Rataro. I was Safari Joe. Remember Safari Joe? But each actor does it a different way. Some of the actors, if two of their characters were talking to each other, bang, 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 bang. Some of them would prefer to do all of one character's lines and then do all the other characters' lines. I thought it was more fun for me to do it in what we call real time. For example, if Jackalman and Lion-O suddenly came through the woods and ran into each other, I would prefer to do it like Jackalman.
Lion-O! Well, never seem to meet you here.
Where's Mum Rock?
None of your business.
Well, you know we're going to find him.
Are you?
It's more fun for me. Oh, thank you. Plus it gets more applause that way. I know what I'm doing.
All right, well, let's give a big round of applause for Larry Kenney.